you. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for attending our session, Diversity in Company Founders and a Pathway Towards Founding Companies. Before I kick off, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Kunbi Tinuoye, and I'm the founder and CEO of UrbanGeekz, an African-American Latinx multicultural digital news platform focused on technology, business science, and entrepreneurship. I'm honored today to be moderating this panel with these two amazing trailblazers. First of all, we have Julia Collins, the first Black woman to co-found a unicorn or billion-dollar company, Zoom Pizza, a VC-backed firm that's raised more than $400 million. And she's now the founder of Planet FWD, a regenerative food business. And we also have Mandela SH Dixon, the CEO and founder of FounderGym, a leading online platform training underrepresented founders on how to build successful startups. So thank you, both of you, for doing this today. I know you're both amazing, and I'm sure our viewers are going to learn a lot today. So Julia, first of all, let me just kick off with you. Just tell us, I mean, we all know about your last round, which was phenomenal. So just tell us a little bit about Planet FWD and what's your overall mission?
Yeah, so it's probably not a surprise to anybody watching today that we're living at the intersection of multiple global crises. We're obviously living through a pandemic. We're in a period of great reckoning when it comes to social and racial justice. But I might remind everyone that we're also living in a climate crisis. And we really need to galvanize all of the talent and the resources that we can toward tackling climate change this decade, so that we can stave off the 2-degree temperature rise beyond which we really don't want to think. So the mission of Planet FWD is to help tackle climate change by making it easier to bring climate-friendly food products to market. We do that in 2 ways. The first is we've created the world's first explicitly climate-friendly snack brand. It's called Moonshot Snacks, and we're launching with a line of crackers this year. So by holiday, you'll be able to buy Moonshot crackers. But we've also created a software tool that allows other brands to identify materials and ingredients that are also climate friendly. So we're doing snacks and software with the mission of tackling climate change.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a phenomenal mission and sounds incredibly innovative. Mandela, also just same with you, just tell us about FounderGym, and obviously we'd love to also know the vision behind your brand as well.
Yeah, so in addition to being a fan of Julia's, I run a company called FounderGym, as you mentioned, and FounderGym is the leading online training center teaching underrepresented founders how to raise capital. But we also launched something brand new called the Money Magnet Program, which is teaching founders how to diversify their revenue streams. Because just like Julia said, we are living in a moment of crisis on multiple fronts. And I think that what we're seeing with the pandemic and the economic ramifications and businesses closing and job loss, that people are really feeling more empowered than ever to use entrepreneurship, not just as a survival skill, but as a skill to thrive during any market conditions. And so we basically are like the epicenter of underrepresented founders who are hungry, forward thinking, really trying to shift what they can create in the world, but also the generational wealth. So on the outskirts, it looks like FounderGym is just training founders. But what we're really doing is we're building the most diverse and inclusive network of high impact leaders in the world who will leverage technology and leadership to grow their wealth, grow their influence, and make a more positive impact on the world. So that's what we're all about. And prior to that, I was a teacher. I'm a soccer player. So I bring all of that to the gym.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you're both incredibly successful founders. So from your experience, what are the very sort of specific struggles or experiences that founders of color, diverse founders, actually have to face?
And Julie, you want to go first?
Absolutely. And Mandela, as somebody who has really a leader in this ecosystem, I'm excited to hear what you're going to say as well. But you know, one of the things that I focus on when I'm looking at companies to invest in is this notion of like distance traveled and how much an individual's been able to do and accomplish given the resources that they started with. One of the challenges that I think many founders face when raising capital is not many venture capitalists also look at things that way. And sometimes they look at a point in time, irrespective of the path it took to get there. And they do something called pattern matching, looking for the next person who went to that school of the last founder that they invested in, or who had a similar upbringing in another way. But if we're matching against pre-existing patterns that we know are leading to racist outcomes, then pattern matching is just perpetuating those racist outcomes. What I really believe that investors need to do now in order to support underrepresented founders is throw away all of the old patterns. They aren't relevant anymore. Think about the distance that an individual has traveled as a proxy for how far they'll go, as opposed to trying to fit them into a rubric that's been predefined based on decades of old patterning.
Yes, +1 to all of that. And she used one of my favorite terms, distance traveled. I co-sign everything Julia just said, and I'll just go a little bit deeper. So as soon as someone enters Founder Gym, the very first exercise we put them through is recognizing their differences as their strengths, celebrating their unique lived experiences, their distance traveled, what makes them them, so that they understand that you don't have to leave your authentic self at the door when you begin this process, but you can bring your full self into the conversation. And it's just about the art and the science of weaving it into a story that really positions you as an authority figure over the domain and the industry that you're trying to disrupt. So yes to what Julia said, absolutely. And I would say, I would add that a big barrier that I've seen hands down, both as a founder and an investor, is the lack of network. And when I say network, oftentimes founders are like, Mandela, I don't know any investors. Like, where do I even start? Do I cold tweet them, cold email them, get to them after they're done speaking at a conference? And really, this is a huge gap in the possibilities of those with the network and those without the network. And so if you don't know any investors, right, you're kind of starting from a very different place than people who are already inside that network. But it's not just about the investors. This is the biggest secret that I didn't know about, or one of the biggest secrets, is that it's really the founders who will get you connected to the investors and to other people you need to know. So everyone's like chasing after these investors, and I'm like, no. Look sideline, right? Look just a couple steps ahead of you to other founders who have already figured out how to navigate this space. And they're going to be your warm intro into the investors. Because what also people don't understand is that investors are competitive, right? And they're not always on the same team, but they are on the same team of the founders that they've already invested in. And so if you also have access to founders who have raised capital already or built successful tech companies already, they can not only be the plug for you to get to investors, but they can also show you the roadmap for how to build a successful company. So I think because of so many underrepresented founders aren't of this world, they're at a disadvantage from the beginning. Kunbi, you there? Am I frozen?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Mandela. Some of the most important relationships in my life from an advising and mentoring perspective are other founders. It's definitely the case that founders can help you make introductions to investors that they've had really good experiences with. They can also let you know, some paths that have been less fruitful. And then beyond, fundraising, there are all the questions about how to build your culture, how to build your product, how to recruit for your organization. I probably have 10 people on speed dial that are other founders that I talk to every week about just those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is, and both of you, I love your creative approach to actually, getting to the investors. What Mandela, when I look at your social media brand and your presence, I feel as if I see someone that's very clear about wanting to show the world that you can, a very kind of balanced work-life balance, someone that's, obviously very proud of actually showing that she's a mother, she's a married woman. So what I would love to talk to you both about, because I know you're, mothers of children, how do you actually balance, how do you balance, being a successful entrepreneur and moving forward with actually family life?
Good question, and I appreciate the acknowledgement that I do try to bring my full self into what I do, because I know a lot of people are looking at me, and I take that responsibility seriously. And I don't just want to be Mandela, like the CEO of Founder Gym, or Mandela the investor. Like, I'm a person, and I have aspirations even beyond what people see of my role in tech in the startup industry. So one thing I will say is I firmly believe balance, or I call it harmony, is subjective. And I think that people have to figure out the harmony that works for them. Because for me, I really love what I do, and what I do gives me energy. And so for me, I can actually spend many hours, sometimes many nights doing this, because it's actually giving me life, it's giving me energy. And to an outsider looking in, they may say, whoa, Mandela's way off balance, or Mandela's a workaholic, right? But that's their perspective. And for me, it's about finding my personal balance that works out for my personal preferences, but also other relationships I care about, right? So before I got married, or before I had a baby, I could just do what I wanted, right? But when I became in relationship with someone else, it was about renegotiating what success looks like. And so for me, I have more boundaries of when I cut off my time to work, and when I'm doing other things in relationship with, whether it's my husband, my daughter, my mother, my sisters, my friends. But I do believe in the importance of, like, I fundamentally believe before you do a business and write that mission statement, that vision statement, that business plan, you should do that for your life. I firmly believe in creating a life mission statement, and understanding that a business is a tool that will help you get to your legacy goal, right? It's just one part of who you are. And I think that separation really allows you to keep things in perspective. So you don't kind of get in the tornado of like the pressure from the VCs and your team, and like, but you remember that this is a part of who you are, and it serves the greater you.
Yeah. And Julie, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's absolutely true that we want to show up as people first, right? And to remind ourselves the reason why we've chosen these entrepreneurial journeys in the first place. It's because we believe that building these businesses will help us to achieve our life's mission. For me, you know, showing up as a great partner and showing up as a great mom really means showing up for myself first. The big change that really came into my life in my mid-30s that I carried over to my early 40s was this idea of like radical self-acceptance, and really recognizing that, yes, I have a lot of balls in the air, but not all of them are glass. And so, as my good friend Tiffany Dufu says in her book, sometimes you drop the ball, and it's okay. The world's not going to end if you miss one bath time or one bedtime, or maybe 3 in a row, because you're jamming super hard on a project and you just are getting energy and don't want to stop. So really being right with yourself, investing in yourself, investing in a sitting practice, meditation, prayer, whatever it is, so that every day you're able to bring all of that energy, that creativity, and that magic to your job. I think that's what makes us successful and happy in the long run.
I hope you're going to do an IG live meditation, Julia, because I am there. You have such a soothing voice and demeanor. I'm like, bring it on. I need to make this a part of my practice. Seriously.
Yeah. It's wonderful. And I think it's so important as well. I mean, it's so challenging being an entrepreneur. So there's just so many things that you have to think about. And it's so important to have that work-life balance, and actually, you know, not just have your identity just completely associated with your brand, to actually think there's a bigger picture. So that is so true. So the other
Kunbi, I'm so sorry. Can I say one thing that's on my heart around this topic? Because I feel like when I was someone sitting and watching someone like Julia or myself and where we are in our careers, I'm like, oh, well, that's nice for you. You have like the network now. You have the brand. Like, I'm on my hustle. I'm on my come up. And I really empathize with that, because I pushed myself to the breaking point, right? Where my health was deteriorated, like my finances were deteriorated. I threw in my all, but it was at the detriment of myself. So even though you may have seen me on the cover, or even though you may have seen the things that I was achieving, I was so unhappy. I was actually miserable. There was a borderline depression. And so I think that, again, I know not everyone tuning in right now may be in the same position we are, where we are in our careers, but it's so important that, again, that I hope that you can still hear what we're saying and know that it's coming from our own lived experiences of probably going off balance or, you know, not taking care of ourselves and what that's done. And you can have seasons to your life, chapters to your life. So what Julia was saying, that sometimes you're going to have to skip a couple of other personal engagements to get done what you need maybe for your business, but understanding that you're going to have to step off that treadmill, right? So rebalance, recharge, recuperate before you get back on. And there can be a balance and a harmony. But I just wanted to call that out because I feel like sometimes it can be unrelatable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'll say the question and then I'll just throw it out to who wants to say it first. So if you knew what you know now, you know, now that you've actually founded these companies, would you have done anything differently? And Julia, I'll start with you.
You know, this is really my third startup, my second venture-backed startup, and the first startup that I have, we completely bootstrapped, and it's now 10 years old. The thing, I mean, to Mandela's point, the thing that I did not do in my first two companies was think at all about self-care or wellness in any way. I burned that candle from both ends so many times that I've collapsed from exhaustion. I've experienced, you know, lots of like imbalance and, you know, not poured into the relationships in my life that could fill me up, because I just was telling myself this story, which is, I think, the story that many Black women face. I'm going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That means I'm going to have to work 4 times as hard to get just as far, 8 times as far. You know, that's the conversation that was going on in my mind. And Kunbi, I wore myself out, and I would reach the point of exhaustion and then have to pick myself up. And after a while, I just got tired of that process. I got tired of having to marshal the energy to put myself back together after reaching the breaking point. And I decided with Planet Forward that I was going to do it differently this time around, this third time around. I was really going to invest in self-care. I was going to set up systems in the company to make sure that other people did the same. And I was going to signpost and be really vocal about the fact that Planet Forward cares about your well-being first and foremost before anything else we do.
You live that, Julia, because even on our prep call, you're like, I just finished my workout. I'm like, it's 4 o'clock. Look at you building in that self-care. I'm like, man. So yes, you are absolutely doing so. I just wanted to acknowledge you because I know you are the CEO and you got a lot going on, but just to make space for that in your team and be an example, it's huge, because it was an example for me, even on the prep call. I'm like, I need to build in some of this. I would say, okay, what have I learned that I would do differently? Absolutely, it would be ask for help. So for me, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Prior to starting my first company, I was a 6th grade teacher, and I never took a business class, never took a finance class, never took a technology class, didn't even know what Silicon Valley was, right? Like, I very much kind of discovered this world. What was I, age 25? And, you know, I fell in love. I fell head over heels in love. Like, I was like, wait a second, this is a world where we don't just talk, we actually do, and we can build stuff and break things. I loved it, and I've never looked back. But it was a huge culture shock for me, a massive, and this was back in 2011. So you have to understand, this is before anybody was talking about diversity and inclusion. This is before any of the several other Black women had raised capital. Like, I didn't realize at the time, but I was very much a first navigating a foreign space. And so for me, what I felt like, even, I don't even know if I ever made a conscious decision, to be honest with you, but I definitely felt the pressure. And I don't know, like Julie was saying, it was self-imposed. Like, okay, I know I need to work harder. And I know I'm also representative, right? Because people may have never seen a founder like me, or where I come from, or how I talk, or how I dress, or how I look. And so I need to make sure I excel. I cannot fail. And so without the luxury of a safety net, even a psychological safety net that accepts failure as part of the as part for the course for success, is that I had so much imposter syndrome, and I just felt like I was always putting on. And by consequence, I really didn't leverage the network that I had. And one thing I learned working at a venture capital firm before I did Founder Gym was I was like, oh snap, I did not know there were other ways you could run a business, right? So I was now in meetings with white men, Asian men, Black women, Black men, Latinx, LGBTQI. Like I saw the gamut of different types of founders raising capital and building their businesses. And I started to notice huge differences in how they behaved as a CEO and also how they unlocked the network that the investors and other founders in the portfolio had. Like I was basically in a portfolio, one of the most powerful portfolios, working with some of the most powerful investors, and I didn't even use them because I was too afraid or I was too prideful or whatever it was. So I have completely shifted the way I operate, and I credit Founder Gym's success to my shift in how I operate and making sure that I'm intentional about attracting talent, unlocking their talent, and asking for help along the way. I ask for help all the time. Yeah. So Julie might get an email from me later today.
Well, I mean, we need a village, don't we, to actually grow and to move forward. We can't do it on our own. And that actually is a good segue to this next question, paying it forward. Do you have any specific examples of how you're helping the startup space become more diverse? I know, Mandela, we know what you're doing, but you can just, you know, is there any ways that you're actually helping? I mean, Mandela, you can start, because we know that what you're doing is really helping founders of color.
Yeah, I feel like you can learn a lot by what people choose to do for their work, because their work takes up so much of their time and their energy and their creative capacity that, like, just understanding, like, I chose to leave a very cushiony venture capital job to do this. Like, that tells you everything about me and where I stand and what I'm really willing to sign up and fight for in my lifetime. And so for me, it's really about democratizing access to what I call not only the technological movement and the innovation movement, but the wealth creation movement, all the wealth that is being created out here. And I really want to teach people how to access that. How can you basically ensure that your creativity intersects with the technology industry so you can actually financially benefit from it and understand not only the financial upside, but the network upside. So for us, again, we have two programs right now. One is the fundraising cohort, which we were so grateful to have Julia be one of our expert trainers, but of course we asked her. Clearly her distance traveled is a big deal. And so we have experts like Julia come in and train founders who are really dead set on learning how to raise capital as a tool to scale their company. And then, like I said, we have a second program now that's called the Money Magnet Program. And if you go to our website, you'll see both of them. And the Money Magnet Program is, again, even if you want to raise capital, you still need to have in your arsenal, your tool belt, multiple ways to bring in money. Because like we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, is a lot of investors weren't investing. They were spooked, right? They're like, I need to go take care of my current portfolio before investing in anyone else. So what do you do as a founder? How do you survive, right? Like, we're like a survivor school, I think, for entrepreneurs. And I'm realizing this as I'm talking right now, but we really teach people how to pivot and persevere through anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Julia, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I mean, Mandela's right. You can learn a lot about a person by what they choose to do for work. I think you can also learn a lot about a person by how they choose to spend their time outside of work. And for me, you know, I spend a huge amount of time doing a couple of things that are really meaningful to me. The first is amplifying the work of amazing ecosystem players like Founders Gym, and really figuring out ways that I can either add my voice or add some resources to build on the work of what's already been created. Black and brown founders, Black women talk tech, Latinas in tech. There's so many organizations that have been doing this work for years, decades, and I want to amplify that work. The second thing I do is, you know, I have the ability now to do a little bit of angel investing, and I've made 15 investments over the last 2 years. I invest exclusively in women and underestimated founders. That's my investment thesis. I'm sector agnostic, and it's really exciting to me to have the ability to participate in some of these deals. My check may not be a huge needle mover in terms of the overall fundraise, but I hope that I can offer to the founders that I'm working with the ability to give them a little bit of help, coaching, support in whatever way they need. And then finally, you know, I do sit on the board of Launch with Goldman Sachs, the advisory board. I sit on the advisory board of Allraise, some of these sort of larger organizations that are trying to build the right programming around underestimated founders. I want to be there as a voice at the table to help influence some of the decisions that can really narrow the capital gap.
Okay, wonderful. And now I definitely need to ask both of you this question, because Julia, you have, you know, Black woman that's basically the co-founder of a unicorn company, and obviously Mandela, you are actively working to help founders of color to actually scale and grow. So what advice, because I'm thinking that some founders now may be watching this and thinking, Julia, what you've achieved is unobtainable. So, you know, let's just go back to the basics. What advice would you give founders trying to raise? You know, how should they start? You know, they've got an amazing idea, it's tech startup, which they feel they can scale and grow. How do they get started? I'll start with you, Mandela, because of the work that you do. And Julia, obviously, we need to talk to you about this because you have what you've achieved. It's phenomenal.
I know. I'm like, yes, talk to the lived experience. I think for me, I haven't nearly raised as much money as Julia. So that's really important for people to understand. Like, the fundraising process shifts as you go up it. If you go from pre-seed to C to Series A, Series B, and beyond. So I'm really excited to actually learn from Julia about how it shifts as you bring in more capital from external parties like venture capitalists. But I would say for the basics, for people who are basically seeking to get their first amount of investor capital, and just to clarify, investors are both angel investors like Julia and myself, but they're also professional institutional investors like the firms that you may hear about, whether that's K4 Capital, Sequoia, Mavron, Andreessen, Bessemer. I mean, there's so many that you can find, but it's just really important people understand the difference. And also accelerators. Accelerators are also like venture capitalists. And I don't think people really understand this, but they basically have like wraparound programming and usually a 3-month model, but they too are investors, right? So there's many opportunities to get capital, and there's also non-dilutive capital, like pitch competitions and contests and grants. So I will not make this into a Founder Gym session right now, so let me focus and answer the question, which is, okay, if you're starting from ground zero and you're trying to fundraise, I just think one of the most important things for people to understand is fundraising is an intentional choice. It's really a decision to use outside capital to go faster and farther than you potentially could operating on revenue alone. Right? So it's like a choice to basically, you know, like the Matrix, what was it? The red pill and the blue pill or something? Like, you're taking this pill and you're like, all right, I'm going down the path of like, we're about to hit the ground running. I'm going to use this capital to hire more people than I could. I'm going to use this capital to build more product than I could, right? Otherwise, if I just were relying on revenue or my own savings. So I oftentimes call it, I don't know if I'm a super fan of this word, but it's like a cheat code in a sense, where you get to use money your business didn't necessarily earn from customers, but you get to use that to scale faster so that you can capture more of the market than, say, your competitors. So if you are choosing to do this, I think number one, you have to make a choice, a conscious decision that this is a path you're taking, and understanding the strings that come attached to that, which is now that you are sharing ownership of your company. You're allowing other people, investors, to be on your cap table, which is a document that shows the breakdown of the ownership of the company, okay? And I would just say one more thing, aside from being intentional, knowing your why, is just the basics of business. I find that so many people just like, whoops, skip this part, and it really creates a lot of chaos, which is knowing your avatar, really understanding who is it that you are trying to serve. Who do you want? I think of entrepreneurship as servant leadership. Like, who are you really excited to serve? And make sure you truly understand these people, not just for the time being when you're starting it, but to keep your finger on their pulse throughout, right, their journey, because as the world changes, they also change their behaviors. But the better you can understand them and watch them and internalize them, the better you can align your solution to their problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julia, well, we need to hear from you.
Yes, we do. And I'm taking notes.
We talk a lot about fundraising, but I think the more important topic is capital strategy. As Mandela said, raising venture capital is a choice. It is not the only way to capitalize your business. And if you look at venture math, maybe 2 to 3% of all of the great businesses that can be started fit within the venture framework. Venture capital is a very specific capitalization strategy for a very specific type of business. It isn't the way to capitalize most businesses. So that's number one. And the second thing is that, I think just sort of spiritually, it's really important to separate your own value from whatever the valuation of your company is at every stage. My grandpa used to say, you're never as good or as bad as they say you are. So you may be coming off a great Series A with an amazing Sand Hill Road firm. It doesn't mean that you have product market fit. It doesn't mean that you have a successful business. That is one component of being able to launch your business. It isn't the business. And that may sound a little obvious, but a lot of times we get so immersed in valuation and fundraising talk that we forget the whole point is to build the company.
So Julia,
the third thing is, to the extent possible in the early stages, really work on your product. Work on your product as much as you can, get it as far as you can on your own before kind of opening up the door to invest.
Thank you so much, both of you. We've actually got a minute left, so we just really need to round up now. I may just ask you, I don't know if we've got enough time, is there any one thing you want to say that you want to accomplish this year before we cut off in a minute? Either of you, anything that you really want to accomplish in the next year?
I'm tackling climate change this year, next year, and for the rest of my life, I'm focused on tackling climate change.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And for me, I am helping more good people become millionaires so they can do more good in the world.
Thank you so much. Appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.